Update.
Update.
Well, ladies and gents, the verdict is upon us. The defendant was facing 2 counts, 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon and another count of common assault. And not as entirely unexpected, the defendant was found not guilty on assault with a deadly weapon, and there was a hung jury on common assault. The jury voted 5-7, and thus it was a hung jury. None of this comes as any great surprise, as in my estimation the case was lost long ago when the female judge allowed the defense to introduce short, out-of-context prior video clips of mine into the case. Statements such as "a man cannot become a woman," "Pedo Joe," and "Free Derek Chauvin" were allowed to be introduced into the case in the form of statements of mine that were truncated, cut in half, taken completely out of context, and then presented to me during cross-examination. Yes, it seemed to have been clear to all parties involved that the defense's strategy hinged on 2 points: a fallacious claim of self-defense and an appeal to the politics of members of the San Francisco jury. I also have it on good authority that the majority of the jurors deluded themselves into thinking that there was no substantial evidence provided as to how I received the wounds that I received. Can you imagine the extent of the radical TDS libtardism it takes to delude yourself in that fashion? Can you imagine that? It was also brought to my attention that at the beginning of the deliberation, the jury took a vote, and that vote was 10-2 for acquittal. One of those 2 jurors was an attorney who served as the jury's foreman and who lobbied the jury to vote to convict. But as the days wore on, apparently his resolve was worn down, and he changed his vote to not guilty, probably as a matter of convenience. As an attorney, perhaps he's a busy man, and serving justice wasn't as important as serving himself. That would be my suspicion. Despite these various outrages, we do have much to be joyous about. First of all, we kept a fucking convicted jihadi behind bars for nearly a year, as even a San Francisco judge wasn't going to let a convicted ISIS terrorist out on bond when he's being held for yet another outrageous crime. And we've ensured that Mr. Islam Saeed Natsa is going straight from the custody of the county of San Francisco, where he's been held for the past year, right back into federal prison, presumably to serve out the rest of his term for his terrorism involving an international conspiracy to run off to Syria and fight for ISIS. And I would remind viewers that despite the court allowing pieces of evidence pertaining to my activities a year before this incident, the jury was not allowed to be appraised of the fact that the defendant is a convicted international ISIS terrorist. Fucking scum!